Hi, welcome to Pampered Chef with Emily. Grab a spoon. I'm going to demo some slow cooker cheeseburger mac. So I've got my deluxe multi-cooker preheating on the sear setting over here on high. If you've got the Pampered Chef quick cooker, which is kind of the previous generation of the multi-cooker, there isn't a different heat setting, so sear is on high. Go ahead and get that started. And what that's going to do is allow us to only use one pot. I don't need to go brown my meat on my stovetop in a separate pan and get something else dirty. I'm just going to do it right here in my pot. So I'm going to grab the oil. Woohoo! Stainless steel center pot. If you're going to use something on the sear setting, you don't add water ahead of time like you do to a lot of other recipes. So we're going to go ahead and generously oil the bottom of that pan. I just did about 2 tablespoons of oil to generously coat the whole bottom of that. You can measure if you want. You see I'm a dumper. And then the pot's not hot yet, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of twist it around. Make sure it's got really good coverage. Then I have my burger. This time I'm using turkey burger. You can certainly use hamburger. You can sub whatever meat you choose, and that will be great. So if you don't want cheeseburger mac, you could do cheese chicken mac. You know, be creative. You could use Philly steak meat in here. You could use seasoned tofu. So make this recipe your own, but I'll invite you to check it out. All right, we're still on preheat here. We're getting close though. So in just a little bit, it'll be hot enough that it'll really sizzle when I put my meat in and start browning it. And while that's going on, I better dig for my tools. I'm gonna grab my mix and chop spatula. This is fairly new, came to the product line in the summer. It's got curved edges and a spot on the handle that I can just push it down. That's super fun. You can also use your classic mix and chop, which is still an absolute favorite. This is not a replacement, it's just another option for you as you go. But I see light smoke coming off the oil I put in here, so we're gonna go ahead and add meat. Here we go. Of course, I'm fighting with my countertop at this moment. There we are. And then I'm just going to go ahead and season that lightly with some salt and pepper. Seasoning salt in my case, but you can use plain regular table salt and pepper. And then as I get going, I'm just going to chunk it up as it browns. All right. And while that cooks away, I'm going to tell you about the rest of the part that we're going to get going in here, and that is the mac part. You can technically use any pasta. My original recipe calls for elbow pasta, but what I have on hand is not elbow. It's farfalla, or bow ties. You could use cavatappi, you could use penne, anything that's kind of that general size of a macaroni noodle. If you go bigger, you're going to need to increase your liquid slightly and potentially increase your time. If you go any smaller than a standard elbow macaroni, you're going to reduce your time and reduce your liquid, or you'll get a soupier result. All right, so got all my ingredients laid out here. I prepped everything ahead of time to pour into this bowl, with the exception of this recipe calls for mustard. We are not mustard fans at this house. Mustard powder, mustard flavor, not our jam. That's okay. A good substitute for mustard is turmeric. So I'm gonna just grab a turmeric here and get my teaspoon of that added in the mix. That'll also help with that mustardy coloring to make this good and yellow. So delicious. I also like turmeric because it has anti-inflammatory properties as well. So fun thing to add into food. It does have a distinctive flavor, but it's not overpowering to me the way that mustard powder is. All right, let me give my meat a stir. If you're using a meat that has a lot more liquid coming off of it, potentially chicken or higher fat content hamburger, you might need to drain your meat in between steps. One reason I really like using turkey, ground turkey, turkey burger, is that there's very little liquid coming off of it. When I get done, I'm not even gonna have to drain it before I go ahead and change my settings and add other ingredients, because the liquid's basically all cooked off. All right, so my timer ended, but my turkey burger isn't quite browned, so I'm just gonna go ahead and cancel and start it again. There we go. So while that's going, this recipe, the things that I have prepped in my bowl already, we've added garlic powder, ground black pepper. Recipe called for salt. I'm using seasoning salt because it adds just a little extra flavor that I do enjoy. Pampered Chef has a seasoning salt. I'm out right now, so I'm using my husband's all-time favorite, Lowry's. I do recommend checking out, there's a Lowry's low sodium. That's also something that we look for in our diet at our house. So that's super fun to keep an eye out on different types of ingredients that you can substitute in and out, rather than necessarily following your original recipe to a T. That's why cooking is so much fun. You can make it your own. You can try out other little flavors. Maybe instead of the chili powder, I wanted to use a Jamaican jerk, or a Kansas City style barbecue, or a Southwestern smoky flavor in my cheeseburger mac. Maybe your cheeseburger mac is using a little everything taco on top of it and giving it a little down south feel. You can experiment as you make yours. We're gonna go with the kind of classic today. This is reminiscent of kind of what my mom used to make for me when she made homemade hamburger helper or cheeseburger mac. Let me give my meat another good stir. We're getting closer. It'll be good. All right, another thing that this recipe calls for is milk. Okay, we are milk drinkers in this house. We do like traditional cow's milk. You can use other milk substitutes. Just be careful of ones that have added sugars for flavor, because that may change your recipe and how that turns out. Another thing that comes up in my house is there's only 2 of us in the household, and while we are milk drinkers, we also sometimes run low on milk between grocery runs. And instead of always just turning to Instacart or food delivery, if that's available in your area, it's fun to have other options for milk on hand. I keep powdered milk in my pantry, so if I'm ever running low on milk and I know I want to have a bowl of cereal later, I want standard cow's milk out of the carton, out of the fridge, fresh, great. In my cooking, in recipes, in baking, anything that I need for that, I can use powdered milk as a perfect substitute in my recipe. Doesn't taste any different, doesn't change the consistency of the outcome. It just saves the milk in my fridge for drinking instead of for baking. Another option you have is if your milk is on sale ever at the store and you have the freezer space to support it, grab extra. Pick up an extra gallon of milk, portion it out into quart-size containers or cup-size containers. I'm a fan of using Ziploc freezer bags for that, labeling them well, measure it out, just put it in that bag, seal it up with as little air as possible, and put it in your freezer. And then anytime you need for baking or cooking, voila, you've got milk, and you've still got milk in your fridge for the kiddos. All right, we are close. Just got a few more pink spots in there that I need to be fully brown before we move on. And I'm going to sprinkle a little extra black pepper and a little extra of my seasoning salt to taste. That is totally up to you. You can do this step without adding any extra seasoning and rely on the seasoning that's going to go into the rest of the ingredients. I like to have the meat seasoned ahead of time, but you can totally do it either way. Also true if you are cooking away in a hurry and you forget. I do just caution, don't oversalt your food. You can always add salt and pepper to it on the table, but you can't take it away. So Seasoning is really important, but it's better to under-season what you're cooking and add to it after the fact to taste. All right, our meat is brown. I'm gonna go ahead and hit cancel. And I'm gonna switch this over to my slow cook setting. Again, slow cook is an option on the original quick cooker and on the deluxe multi-cooker. And I want this on low, and we're gonna cook for, I'm gonna go ahead and do 2 hours right now. So my pasta recipes, slow cooker pastas, I don't want them to get overly done and mushy, and so those are ones that I'm gonna cook for less time. This particular recipe I'm calling for, I believe, says you could go up to 3.5 hours on the slow cook setting, up below slow cooker setting. You can certainly do that. You can also do it on high for 1 hour, depending on what you need. I know my favorite thing about slow cooker recipes is usually dump, walk away, be gone all day, or be working all day and then come back. But I am working from home this Friday afternoon, and so, well, Friday all day, if you couldn't tell from my clothes. I'm in the office on my lunch break doing this wonderful demo for you. So because I'm here and I'm able to monitor it, I'm gonna do less time so my pasta doesn't get overcooked, and I can check that. And again, that'll be another thing to keep in mind as you play around with the recipe and try out different types of pastas. So this is good to go here. So next I just need to dump in my ingredients, which in this case, we did, by the way, pound of the protein of my choice. This is 2.5 cups of milk, again, from milk powder. I'm just gonna go ahead and pour that on in. My recipe calls for 1 can of evaporated milk, so shake that up good. And this one has the handy pull tab, which is my favorite, except for my fingernails hurt trying to get it open. So guess what? I'm gonna grab my pan scraper that I keep over at my sink and use that instead to save my fingernails. Get that right underneath the tab on this can. You can do this on pop cans, beer cans as well. And go ahead and lift that top and save your fingernails. All right, and we're gonna get the evaporated milk right in there. All right. And then the seasonings that I measured out ahead of time. I love these 1 cup prep bowls for that. It is so nice to just be able to set this out ahead of time. Or if I have a recipe I need somebody to add later, I can be like, hey, Bill, can you dump the bowl of seasoning right next to the quick cooker in when it goes off? Fantastic. You can also totally prep fresh vegetables and things and keep that in the fridge. Have stuff ready ahead of time. Prep saves so much. Like that's how you save time in the kitchen, is prepping ahead. All right, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and get that stirred all in there really nicely. And then I need to add my pasta. Did you know that pasta is measured by weight, not by volume? So the original box is a full pound, which is what my whole recipe called for. I cut back on everything just a little bit because I don't have a full box. I already made a meal for us out of this, and so we're gonna go ahead and use what's remaining. Cooking, you can dump and make adjustments like this, like I'm doing, like reducing a little. I didn't do an exact science on all of these. When you're baking, it's more important to stay precise to the recipe and measurements, because that's more about the chemistry and how your recipe is going to turn out. Cooking, not so much, which makes it so accessible to all of us, because it's okay if you mess up, or if you're a little off, or you're a little short. All right, stir in my pasta. All right, and with that turkey burger already in my pot, my pasta isn't completely covered by some of the liquid, which means I might want to come back and stir this about halfway through the cooking, and that's okay. Then the last thing I need to do is the recipe calls for me to dot the top with butter. Again, in cooking, you can substitute your oils as you choose. So I'm going to dot mine with margarine instead of butter. Totally up to you what you would like to choose, whether you want butter or ghee or something else. I don't recommend shortening or lard in cooking recipes unless your recipe calls for that. Whereas those can be really great fats to use in your baking for fluffy crisp crusts and things. All right. And then Oh, and I forgot to mention one of the ingredients I'm using today. I was gifted some really delicious pepper flakes that my parents brought back from a trip to New Mexico. These are not super spicy, but they add a wonderful smoky, rich flavor. And so I love to throw that in. So that's already in the mix as well. And then we're all stirred up. So I'm just gonna add my slow cooker clear glass lid, and we are gonna start. And there you have it, cheeseburger mac. I'll have to show a picture in the comments of how it turns out. We'll let you know. Feel free to play around with flavors and textures and comment about it and share a recipe if you followed it. By the way, the recipe I followed today, I Googled. I found a recipe I wanted. If you are needing recipes for your quick cooker, for your Instapot, for your deluxe multi-cooker from Pampered Chef, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help you find recipes. I also have recipes available on my website all the time. Just go to mypamperedchef.com/pws/EMKOONCE site and do a search at the top and select recipes instead of products. That's how you find recipes on my site. There are thousands there available to you. And again, you're also welcome to just go to Google, slow cooker cheeseburger mac, and find the one. I like to use the recipes that have the most people who've done them. And so the recipe I'm using today had like 4.5 stars that it shows up in your search results, and several thousand people have tried the recipe and left a review. If you find a recipe online and it's got like 5 people have tried it, feel free to check it out, but it might not be a tried and true recipe. So that's also one of my tips for finding fun recipes to try at home. See you next time on Pampered Chef with Emily. Grab a spoon.